My name is Ren Calloway, and I want to tell you about the moment I realized my entire childhood had been a job I never applied for. I was standing in the security line at O'Hare International Airport, carry-on bag in one hand, boarding pass in the other, wearing the kind of exhausted smile that only comes from finally being about to do something entirely for yourself. I was 27 years old. I had saved $11,000 over 14 months. I was flying to Italy for 3 weeks. Rome, Florence, the Amalfi Coast, a trip I had dreamed about since the 8th grade, when my geography teacher showed us slides of the Colosseum, and something inside me just ached to go there. My phone buzzed as I reached the conveyor belt. I figured it was my friend Danny wishing me safe travels. It wasn't. It was my mother. 7 texts, sent back to back, each one arriving before I could fully read the one before it. Ren, call me immediately. This is serious. Your brother fell off his bike and may have a concussion. We need you here. I can't believe you're not answering. This is a family emergency. If you get on that plane, you are choosing a vacation over your own blood. Ren. Fine. When something terrible happens, just remember you chose this. You have always been selfish. I hope Italy was worth it. I stood at that conveyor belt for a long moment, shoes in the bin, laptop out, people piling up behind me, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not guilt. Not panic. Exhaustion so deep it had its own gravity. Because I had been here before. Not at O'Hare specifically, but in this exact emotional location, where my needs collided with my mother's needs, and hers always won. I had been here 1,000 times, and for the first time in my life, I kept walking. Let me back up, because you need to understand what I was walking away from before you can understand why walking away was the hardest and most necessary thing I've ever done. I am the oldest of 4 kids. My mother, Patrice, had me when she was 19, and my father, Gerald, was 21. By the time I was 7, I had 3 younger siblings. My brother, Eli, who's 5 years younger than me, and the twins, Becca and Noah, who were born when I was 9. My parents were not bad people in the way people imagine bad parents to be. They didn't drink. They didn't disappear for weeks. They weren't cruel in obvious, reportable ways. They were just deeply, profoundly unwilling to be inconvenienced by the realities of having children. My mother had a social life she treated like a second career. Book clubs, girlfriend trips, neighborhood association meetings, spa days, her weekly dinner rotation with my Aunt Cheryl. My father worked long hours at his auto parts distribution job, and when he came home he needed to decompress, which meant television and silence. Not children. So the children got me. I don't remember the exact moment the shift happened, but I remember being 10 and knowing that if I didn't get Eli bathed by 7:30, he'd fall asleep in his clothes and be cranky all the next day. I remember being 11 and packing all 3 of their lunches the night before school because my mother routinely forgot. I remember being 12 and putting the twins to bed with a story and a nightlight while my parents were at a neighbor's dinner party 3 houses down. No one ever sat me down and said, "Ren, you're in charge now." It just happened the way water finds cracks in concrete. Gradually, then completely. By the time I was 14, I was doing the grocery shopping on Saturday mornings with a list my mother left on the kitchen counter and $50 from the drawer beside the refrigerator. I knew that Noah was lactose intolerant and that Becca refused to eat anything with visible onions. I knew Eli slept better with a fan running. I knew which pediatrician to call and how to describe symptoms and when something was serious enough for the emergency room. I cooked dinner 4 nights a week. I helped with homework. I signed permission slips when my parents forgot. I sat in the parking lot of the elementary school when they were late for pickup, keeping Becca calm because she cried when she was the last one left. Teachers called me responsible. Neighbors said I was mature for my age. My grandmother told me I was a gift. Nobody asked why a 14-year-old was doing the work of 2 adults. I want to tell you about the summer I was 17, because I think about it more than any other. I had been invited to a 6-week environmental science program at a university 2 states away. My biology teacher nominated me. It was fully funded. Housing, meals, everything covered. One of the best opportunities of my academic life, and a real credential for college applications. I brought the acceptance letter home on a Wednesday afternoon, hands shaking with excitement. My mother read it at the kitchen table while drinking her afternoon coffee. She set it down, took another sip, and said, "Well, 6 weeks is a long time. Who would handle things here?" That was it. That was the whole conversation. I didn't go to the program. I spent that summer making sandwiches and refereeing arguments between Becca and Noah and driving Eli to his baseball games because my father had inventory weeks and my mother had made plans. I told myself it was fine, that I was being a good sister. That family comes first. What I didn't understand then, what it took me years and a therapist named Dr. Angela Reeves to fully absorb, was that family comes first is a beautiful value that my parents had quietly weaponized into Ren comes last. I went to the state university 40 minutes from home. Not because it was my first choice. Because leaving felt impossible. And impossible had become my default setting. I commuted. I worked part-time at a campus coffee shop. I came home in the afternoons to help with homework and dinner because by the time I was in college, the kids were teenagers. But my parents hadn't adjusted their expectations of me accordingly. I graduated with a degree in environmental science and took a job with a consulting firm in the city. I found an apartment. I moved out at 22, which my mother treated like a personal betrayal. She cried actual tears at my kitchen table when I told her. "We rely on you," she said. "You know that." But I wasn't free. Even from 30 minutes away. The texts kept coming. "Eli needs a ride to his friend's house. Can you swing by? Noah has a project due. Can you help him tonight? Becca is being dramatic about something at school. Can you talk to her?" Always phrased as questions. Always functioning as orders. I answered almost all of them. Because I loved my siblings with everything I had. They felt like mine in ways that were complicated and real, and probably not entirely healthy. I had helped raise them. Of course they felt like mine. But I was 25. Then 26. And I was starting to understand that I was living half a life. That I had never once taken a trip by myself. That my savings account existed in theory but kept getting drained for emergencies my parents should have planned for. That every time I tried to prioritize something for myself, a crisis materialized. Dr. Reeves called it parentification. She explained it to me in the calm, measured way that therapists deliver devastating information, like a surgeon describing something on a scan. She told me it was a recognized pattern of emotional harm, in which parents assign adult responsibilities to children, robbing them of their developmental years. She told me what I had experienced had a name, and that the name mattered. It mattered because I had spent 15 years telling myself it was just helping out. The Italy trip was mine. Completely. Entirely mine. I had researched it for 2 years. I took an Italian language class at the community center on Thursday evenings. I bought a travel journal. I had a color-coded itinerary with a mix of museums, local neighborhoods, cooking classes, and one afternoon specifically reserved for sitting at a cafe doing absolutely nothing. I told my parents 8 months in advance. I showed them my dates on the calendar app. I explained that I would be largely unreachable due to time zones and limited international data. I was clear and direct in a way that Dr. Reeves had coached me on. My mother nodded and said, "That's nice, honey," in the tone she uses when she's not actually listening. My father said, "Be careful over there," and I thought, foolishly, that we had an understanding. 4 weeks before my departure, Eli, who was 22 by then, got his driver's license suspended for a minor traffic violation. This somehow became my problem. My mother called me 3 times in one day about logistics for getting Eli to work, as though I were a rideshare service she had on retainer. I said, "Mom, he's 22. He can figure out the bus system or a carpool. I'm not able to do this long term." She said, "I knew you'd be like this about it." 2 weeks before I left, my father mentioned that the twins, who were 18 and still at home for 1 more year before college, had been struggling to keep up with household responsibilities. He said this in a way that was clearly designed to make me volunteer to help. I didn't volunteer. He looked disappointed. I got on the plane, and standing in that security line at O'Hare, reading those 7 texts about Eli's supposed concussion, I knew something with cellular certainty. This was a test. My mother had known my flight was today. She had known that a medical emergency text would make me hesitate, feel guilty, potentially turn around. I texted her once, from the gate, "I'm boarding now. I hope Eli is okay. Please take him to urgent care if you're concerned and text me when you land in Italy." I didn't say land. I meant when I land. Autocorrect. She didn't respond. I boarded the plane. The texts were waiting for me when I landed in Rome at 9 in the morning local time. Phone buzzing like something mechanical was wrong with it. 34 messages over 8 hours. My mother, my father, my Aunt Cheryl. 2 cousins I barely spoke to. A family friend named Renata, who I genuinely had not seen since a Christmas party 6 years ago. I sat in the customs hall and read them in order, the way you watch a storm come in from a distance, knowing you can't stop it. Eli did not have a concussion. He had a headache. He had taken 2 ibuprofen and gone to sleep by 10 p.m., according to a text Becca had sent him that I could see because we were in a family group chat. He was fine. My mother's messages escalated anyway. By text number 9, she had moved from Eli's headache to a broader indictment of my character. "You have become someone I don't recognize. You care more about sightseeing than your own family." By text 16 she said, "If you stay in Italy, don't expect things to be the same when you come back." By text 22, "I'm not sure we have a relationship anymore, Ren. You've made your priorities very clear. I called Eli directly from the arrivals hall. He answered immediately. Hey Ren. Are you in Italy? That's so cool. He sounded completely fine. He sounded like a 22-year-old who had taken ibuprofen and slept off a headache. Eli. Mom sent me 34 messages saying there was a family emergency. He was quiet for a second. Yeah, my head hurt really bad after I went running in the heat. She kind of escalated. He paused. You know how she is. Are you okay? I almost laughed. My brother, who had just been presented as the justification for canceling my international trip, was calling me from the couch, asking if I was okay. I'm okay, I said. I'm in Rome. I'm going to my hotel. Good, he said. Send me a picture of the Colosseum. I found a therapist who offered international telehealth sessions through a platform I'd been using with Dr. Reeves. Her name was Dr. Sandra Cho, specializing in family systems and emotional abuse recovery. And I scheduled an emergency session from my hotel room the evening of my first day. Still jet-lagged, still processing the avalanche of texts, I summarized everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, What you're describing is a classic control pattern. The manufactured emergency on the day of departure. The escalating language. The recruitment of extended family. These are not the behaviors of someone worried about a headache. These are the behaviors of someone trying to re-establish dominance. She used the phrase designated family scapegoat. She explained that in family systems with dysfunction at the core, one person is often assigned the role of emotional regulator for everyone else. When that person steps out of the role, the system panics. You stepping onto that plane, she said, was an act of profound self-determination. The reaction you're receiving is evidence of that. Not evidence that you did something wrong. I cried. Quietly. In a hotel room in Rome, with a view of terracotta rooftops in the early evening light. Dr. Cho assigned me one task for the trip. Do not respond to messages designed to destabilize you. Read them. Note them. Do not engage. Let the storm exhaust itself. The messages kept coming for the first week. My Aunt Cheryl texted me that my mother was devastated and that real family doesn't abandon each other in a crisis. I noted it. I did not respond. A cousin posted something vague but pointed on social media about people who think vacations matter more than blood. I noted it. I did not respond. My father sent a single, cold message on day 4. Your mother is not well. I hope you're happy with yourself. I noted it. I did not respond, and I went to the Vatican. I stood in the Sistine Chapel with my head tilted back and I cried again, but differently this time. Not from grief. From something closer to awe. At the world being enormous and beautiful and real, and me being in it, finally. On my own terms. I ate dinner alone at a small restaurant in Trastevere on day 6. Cacio e pepe, and a glass of wine and a novel I'd been meaning to read for 2 years. The waiter was kind and funny. I left a big tip. I walked back to my hotel through streets that smelled like stone and jasmine and motor scooters, and I felt something I did not have a word for at the time. I know the word now. It's sovereignty. The quiet, radical ownership of your own life. On day 9, Eli called again. I want to tell you something, he said. Mom's been telling everyone you abandoned the family. Aunt Cheryl is calling you the selfish one. I just want you to know that Becca and Noah and I have been talking, and we know what's actually happening. What's actually happening, I asked. You left, he said simply. And now everyone can see that she was using you to avoid doing the hard parts of being a parent. And it's uncomfortable for them to see that. So they're making you the bad guy. He was 22 years old. He had figured out in 9 days what had taken me years of therapy to articulate. We love you, Ren, he said. Go see the Amalfi Coast. Please. I came home 21 days after I left. I had photographed the Colosseum and the Uffizi Gallery, and the lemon groves on the Amalfi Cliff roads. I had taken a cooking class in Florence where a 70-year-old woman named Juliana taught me to make fresh pasta from scratch, and told me in approximate English that the secret to good food is patience, and that you cannot rush. Something worth making. I thought about that a lot, on the flight home. I cannot rush something worth making. My parents did not speak to me for 4 months after I returned. I used that time well. I went back to Dr. Reeves. I had honest conversations with Eli and the twins about what our family dynamics had actually looked like, and what we each wanted to build going forward. I started saying no to things I had always said yes to out of obligation. And I started saying yes to things I had always avoided because they felt selfish. I joined a hiking club. I signed up for an advanced environmental certification that required a weekend course in Asheville, North Carolina. I went. It felt extraordinary, and terrifying. And right. My mother reached out first. Eventually. She called on a Sunday afternoon in February, and her voice had lost some of its performance quality. She sounded tired. Smaller. I want to try, she said. I don't fully understand what I did wrong, but I want to try. I told her what I needed clearly and without apology. Consistent, genuine respect for my time and my limits. No manufactured emergencies. No recruiting relatives to pressure me. Honest communication instead of manipulation. She was quiet for a long time. I thought that's what family does, she said finally. Drops everything for each other. Dropping everything works, I said, when it goes both ways. But for 20 years, I was the only one dropping anything. We are rebuilding. Slowly. It is uncomfortable and non-linear, and sometimes I leave phone calls feeling raw and depleted. But there are also moments, small ones, where I can see her actually trying. Where she asks how my week was and actually listens to the answer. Where she doesn't make her problems my emergency. I don't know where we end up. But I know who I am now in a way I never did when I was managing everyone else's lives. Becca is in her second year of college, studying nursing. She called me last month, excited and nervous about her first clinical placement. I want to work with kids someday, she said. Kids from families where things weren't great. Because I know what it's like when someone just shows up for you. You have someone who did that? I asked, careful. I have a sister, she said. She showed up for us for years. And then she showed up for herself. And she taught us we were allowed to do the same thing. I didn't say anything for a moment. I love you, Becca. I love you too. Send me the pasta recipe from Italy. I am writing this from the apartment I have lived in for 3 years now. The one I decorated exactly how I wanted. The one that is mine. It's a Tuesday evening. I have a candle going. I made that pasta. Giuliana's pasta. For dinner. 3 weeks in Italy, $11,000, and 20 years of learning that I was allowed to want a life of my own. That loving people does not require erasing yourself for them. That boundaries are not walls. They're the thing that makes genuine relationship possible. Because without them, it's not a relationship. It's just labor. I hope you know that. Wherever you are not the family employee. You are not the designated crisis manager. You are not responsible for holding together something that was broken before you were old enough to understand what broken meant. You are allowed to want things for yourself. You are allowed to get on the plane,